Welcome back to Luxe Insider with me, your host, Anita Khatri. We are already in the last month of 2021. For the majority of India, the last month of the year is the wedding season. In this episode, I'm joined by a friend who'll unpack the different layers of the big, fat Indian wedding. Potential brides and grooms, this episode is for you. But before that, let's take a quick look at the latest in the world of luxury. The fashion industry poured in tributes for Louis Vuitton's director of menswear and the founder of streetwear brand Off-White, the celebrated designer Virgil Abloh. He was known for pushing boundaries thanks to his childlike curiosity and eagerness to instill a sense of playfulness. To pay tribute, Louis Vuitton launched their first US fashion show at Miami, titled Virgil Was Here. The focal point of the show was a giant red Louis Vuitton monogrammed hot air balloon that got illuminated as Abloh's voice played in the background. Luxury fashion brands have expanded their business to include children's wear. You heard it on our show first with Off-White. Now, the Parisian luxury fashion and accessory brand Jacquemus has launched its children wear capsule collection in the pink color palette, continuing the founder's obsession with bright fuchsia pink. The collection is targeted at children aged 3 to 10. Looking closer to home, the wedding of Bollywood actors Katrina Kaif and Vicky Kaushal was held at Six Senses Fort Barwara in Rajasthan. The Indian weddings business seems to be bouncing back. Wedding planners, venue operators, and hotels are optimistic of full recovery with a surge in big, fat Indian weddings this season. That was all on the news this week. Moving on to this week's focus, luxury weddings. Seema Auntie from 2020 Netflix show Indian Matchmaking believed that her efforts for a match are of no use if the stars are not aligned. Majority of Indians believe that matches are made in heaven, but it is the pomp and the grandeur which really marks an Indian wedding. Even today, weddings are significant milestones in Indian families, deeply rooted in tradition and culture. An average Indian family spends a third of their life's earnings in getting their children married. Every event planned to the detail, the celebration of the coming together of a couple and their families can last for a minimum 2 to 3 days with multiple events and a long guest list of 300 to 1,000 people. That was pre-COVID times. What about the post-COVID times? I caught up with my friend Parthip Thyagarajan, the co-founder and CEO of India's leading bridal media brand, WeddingSutra.com. Founded in 2000, much ahead of its time, WeddingSutra.com went on to become a trusted source of wedding-centric information, reaching out to millions of to-be-weds in India and outside. I spoke with Parthip to understand the current dynamics of the wedding industry, the most happening wedding destinations today, and also some tips for potential brides and grooms on how to work around the multiple vendors involved in the creation of the big fat Indian wedding. Let's hear from Parthip. Parthip, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time. And we are so looking forward to understand this very interesting and integral part of any Indian family, that is weddings.
Thank you, Anita, for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to the interaction today.
Thanks, Parthip. So, Parthip, I have been always intrigued with this, and I finally get this opportunity to ask you this question. So, why weddings? What was the driving factor for you in 2000 to move from mainstream media to weddings?
Very interesting question, Anita. And since we have been colleagues earlier, you will find it even more interesting. I'm from a South Indian background where weddings have always been simple affairs. And for me, the motivation to start Wedding Sutra was the fact that I could finally be an entrepreneur. 2000, as you know, was the year of dot coms. Many officers and managers from the Times Group were quitting to start a dot com or join a dot com. I didn't know anything about the wedding industry, but there's one thing I knew about the wedding industry. A significant proportion of advertising budgets are devoted to the wedding segment. So back then, if you're looking at Times of India as a publication, photography companies like Kodak, travel companies like SOTC, jewelry companies like Tanishq and the De Beers, many of their campaigns were centered around weddings. So even though I didn't know much about the wedding industry and how it works, I knew that a platform like Wedding Sutra, whose primary revenue model was advertising, would always have it easy with advertising budgets coming from agencies as well as brands. So that's my answer, Anita.
Well, you were on right track, is all I can say, and really proud of you how far you have come as far as wedding industry is concerned. This platform, of course, has gained that trust from the audience. My next question would be, how has the wedding industry changed since 2000 in terms of hiring planners and becoming a robust industry? When do you think this idea of hiring wedding planners in India really take off?
You know, Anita, since we once spoke about the movie Band
Yes.
Baja Barat, I want to tell you about another movie, Monsoon Wedding by Meera Nair, which released somewhere in the year 2002, where the person who is the mandap person, he is a very crude person, and the family is just kind of kicking him around and telling him to hurry up. And from that, and he was the only person who was primarily depicted working at the wedding. You didn't see makeup artists, photographers, designers, anybody else. Fast forward to 2010, thanks to social media, you saw a lot of interest in wedding photography as a profession, and a lot of engineers started pursuing wedding photography over the weekend. A lot of event planners who would not take on weddings. We know many, since we are both from, a media company, we knew they were event managers event management as such started taking off as a profession in the late 90s, but many of them would not touch weddings. But post 2010, 11, event management companies started a wedding vertical, just as how advertising agencies all started a digital vertical. And Band Baja Barat, of course, really glorified the wedding planner, but it is at the end of the day does not give the real glimpse into the real world of the wedding planner. After all, we all know real life is so different from real life. And my answer to that question on the popularity of wedding planners, I would say India is one country, while the wedding industry may be huge, in 90% of the cases, it is a mother who is the wedding planner. When I started off Wedding Sutra in 2000, I happened to meet a common friend who is a very well-known jewelry designer. And she was the one who shared this insight that the wedding of one's son or daughter is something a woman, whether she's a working woman or a non-working woman, looks forward to all her life. And she plans it all. Yes, if it is a very big wedding, it's a big budget wedding with 500 or 1,000 plus guests. Event management's companies step in for execution. That said, most wedding planners are primarily involved in execution of various logistics related or entertainment and decor related stuff, and it is the parents, especially the mother, along with the event management company stroke wedding planner, who co-create the affair to remember.
Parthip, so well explained. And yes, mother is essentially the not only the planner, I think she dreams of this day. Parthip, you mentioned the difference between the real and the real life. Can you explain what goes on behind the scenes?
I think to a great extent it just builds interest in weddings as a profession, and many women, young men and women, dream of pursuing a career as a wedding planner. But what they don't realize is beyond wedding planning, there are so many opportunities for creative and talented professionals. I have already spoken to you about candid wedding photography and wedding films. There's wedding bartending, there is wedding catering, makeup, styling, decor designing, and there's trousseau packaging, gifting. The list could go on and on. At the Wedding Sutra Influencer Awards, one of the winners was a lady from Dehradun. She's an alumni of Willems. She's always lived in Dehradun. And today, ever since the JW Marriott Mussoorie became a hotspot for destination weddings, she's there almost every week during the peak season to assemble wedding cakes. So that gives you a little insight into how there are options and more options for creative professionals in the wedding industry. And when I meet people from all over the country who have made their own mark in something or the other relating to weddings, be it as a live entertainer, DJ, choreographer, MC, and how they are traveling to different places, it is very heartwarming. The one thing which is common for all the people who are working in the wedding industry is not only about their creativity and talent, but most of them are people oriented and they enjoy going to spaces. These are not wedding venues. I call them happy spaces where there is happy energy, and that is what they love most about their job.
Happy spaces. Since you mentioned about these happy spaces, which according to you are the current most sought after wedding destinations for the ultra HNIs or the wealthy people? Because these destinations earlier were mostly international destinations. Now with lockdown, things would have changed. So how have they changed, and which are the most popular current sought after wedding destinations?
You're right that a lot of ultra HNIs were considering international locations pre-COVID, but many of them had, weddings in one of their palace-like homes or their farmhouses, and of course, palace properties in Rajasthan and luxury resorts in Goa, Kerala were and continue to be popular. Post pandemics, most families have come up with a plan B. What the pandemic has taught us is that among like everything about life, but when I look at the lens of celebrations, it is what you call tolerance to ambiguity. You could be the bride who's dreamt of getting married, in a large palace wedding, but you also realize in these times your dream of having that particular theme may not be fulfilled. And if it doesn't get fulfilled, it's not the end of the world. You have a plan B, which means you can still have the wedding of your dreams in your home or at a hotel next door or a farmhouse or resort which is not too far from your hometown. And since we live in Bombay, I will tell you about how locations such as Lonavala, Alibag, Karchat, and a little beyond these places, Pune, among others, have seen a surge in inquiries. Or for most five-star hotels in the city, which are centrally located, they are all unavailable on the auspicious dates. And if people are not able to travel for a destination wedding, they have a destination style wedding in their hometown, which means 50 of their friends could check into the JW Marriott Sahar or Juhu or Taj Lands and Bandra or Santa Cruz and have a destination wedding style wedding in their hometown.
what is this destination wedding in your hometowns? Like what when you're saying Bandra, elaborate a little bit. Like what you're saying is that in Bandra, Taj Lands End or JW Marriott, you check in and 50 of your guests check in. It's basically you're saying that people don't have to travel from all over Bombay, but they come and park themselves for two nights at JW Marriott or Taj Lands End and enjoy, and it still feels like a destination.
Absolutely, you said that right. Since traveling can be a bit of a core, especially for senior citizens, and the fun of attending a wedding may just, kind of go if you are, you have to travel in the morning and the evening. What you end up doing is on day one, you all guests check in, especially the close friends check in, and you have a welcome dinner. Day two, you have the wedding, and you follow it up with a cocktail, and therefore your closest friends check in for 2 nights and have a destination wedding style wedding in the hometown, so which means they don't have to we all know how it's not even easy now to the domestic journeys are also not easy with the numbers soaring and checks increasing. Sometimes you have to wait for a very long time. So therefore, it's all about the fact that you don't have to travel far to enjoy. And we've seen that happening during COVID, right? So people are traveling a lot to places close to their hometown and also exploring new locations in the country. And that is what we've even seen with destination weddings, that the Mayfair properties in Northeast, the newer Taj resorts, which are in some of the spiritual destinations. These are all locations which people are traveling to for weddings as well as milestone celebrations.
For our listeners, can you just name these new happening destinations that you're referring to?
Sure. There is the Mayfair Resort in Siliguri. There's a Taj Hotel in Darjeeling and Rishikesh. There is JW Marriott and ITC property in Mussoorie. There is the Sheraton and Intercontinental in Mahabalipuram. Then there is Pondicherry. There are many locations which were till recently not big on destination weddings, and what you call the hill stations, which didn't even have many five-star hotels with adequate inventory. And there's many of them are still not very practical because you do not have flight connectivity, whether if you may have to drive down 4 or 5 hours, but they are all with the interest. And what happens is, in many locations you cannot even have a wedding in the outdoors either because of the monsoons or the summers. So therefore the HNIs are all going back to the hill stations, just as how the newlyweds would head to the hills for their honeymoons in the 70s or the 80s. And then, a couple of decades later, everybody started going abroad for their honeymoons. And now we find 30 years later, for the HNI segment, honeymoons are, the hill stations are the destination for smaller celebrations, at least, if not for the wedding.
So, in a way, lockdown and COVID 19 has been a blessing for Indian economy, especially for India and Indian hill stations. This is good news.
Yes, and it's India shining, Indian destinations. So it is all about travel within your country, since traveling abroad is not so easy now and may not even be for a few more months.
Before we proceed to our next question, listeners would be very keen to understand which are your favorite or which properties, Indian properties, to host a big fat Indian wedding. Which, according to you, is your favorite one?
I really like the Taj Falaknuma Palace in
Obviously,
Hyderabad.
that is beautiful.
That's
Yeah.
one location in beautiful. I like the Intercontinental in Mahabalipuram. It's a very nice ride from The Chennai Airport and Intercontinental is a very nice beach property. And I like all the properties in Mahabalipuram, be it Sheraton, Radisson, and Fisherman's Cove. I In Bombay, of course, Taj Mahal Palace is my favorite always. In in Rajasthan, it would be Fairmont Jaipur and the Leela Udaipur. And I have not traveled. I have traveled a lot around Kerala, but I have not attended a wedding there. And I look forward to visiting the Grand Hyatt Kochi one day. And yeah, so that kind of covers most of and Goa. I've attended a lot of destination weddings, but each property has a charm of its own.
So, besides these, what are the other challenges or problems that the luxury wedding industry experienced during the lockdown?
I think they were just not prepared for these frequent changes in rules. And I think many of them were just living in denial, thinking everything will be back to normal in a few months. Those who were prepared for the long haul or changed their business model or launched a new wedding vertical or a vertical not necessarily relating to weddings only, it could be any business vertical. And or those who said, hey, you know what, I'm going to take all the precautions and I'm going to step out and I'm just not going to remote control, like, my workers are on site and I'm sitting at home. So people who ventured out with all precautions, who were mentally prepared for the long haul, have done well and will continue to do well. And I do not see these as major challenges anymore, because we're all learning to live with my ambiguity. So even those who are planning a wedding in December, they know if everything goes off as per plan, we thank the God. But if for whatever reasons cases rise and there are guest cancellations, you need to be prepared with a plan B. And what is very important at the end of it all is the wedding needs to happen, because that itself is a blessing. So we have changed a lot, that everything does not have to go as per plan. You don't have to be rigid or dogmatic about what you want. You have to be happy with what happens in the prevailing circumstances.
Thanks so much, Parthip. Uh, Talking about big fat Indian wedding, can you give us some insights? What actually the big fat Indian wedding entails? And do you remember some peculiar instances that you can recall and you cannot really forget? Would you be in a position to share that with our listeners?
Sure. I think there are so many surprises which come when you're attending your first few weddings. And I still remember that, when I attended one of the biggest engagements which happened at the Sheraton Hua Hin. It was just amazing to see the number of professionals who had flown down from Bangkok in Thailand, Dubai, Bombay, and Delhi from India, to be a part of the many setups, and how the planner worked behind the scenes to create such different themes, and more than anything else, to ensure that the bride and the groom made the most dramatic entry. What also got me interested is how at many of the ultra HNI weddings, there is not one but multiple wedding planners. There could be one wedding planner from the boys' side, one wedding planner from the girls' side, one who specializes in entertainment, the other one who is coordinating the decor, and the other one who's probably managing the hospitality. But what is very interesting is that it does not matter what the company name is. All these various elements of the Indian, which go into creating the Indian wedding are managed by people you trust most. So those could be your secretary, or an event management friend, or an uncle or an aunt, or a wedding planner, among others. So that is what makes the organization or structure of the Indian wedding so unique. You don't need to be running a full fledged wedding planning company to be managing or taking part responsibility of wedding planning at a wedding.
I remember one of the weddings in Mauritius, which I attended. It was a destination wedding. During that wedding, we were all quite taken aback with the entry of bride and groom. It was in a boat, and there was a ship and a boat, and the amount of the minute details that they had to organize because of the crackers and the flowers and the how the flowers timing of the flowers, the entry and sudden popping up of the bride and the groom from nowhere. So it was really a spectacular event to watch, and I can never forget that. But you are absolutely correct, and a lot to do with your trusted ones who actually help get this event and make it memorable. Absolutely. For our listeners, this we will not leave this opportunity. That's now that we have got you on our show, our listeners have to be benefiting the most, and the potential bride and grooms often have to deal with vendors within this industry. Wedding Sutra is a platform where you must be, dealing and interacting with so many vendors. So we really require your help to understand how does a potential groom and bride ensure that they have got value for money, because this industry is largely quite unorganized when it comes to dealing with vendors, be it your makeup artist, be it your wedding the setup, the flower person. The list can go on. I think you are in a better position to add on to this.
Yes, I think one is, of course, today brides and grooms do a lot of research on the web. They also take references from their friend, and they check on costings. Yes, during auspicious dates, when vendors know that the number of enquiries is much more than they can handle, the rates are higher. So therefore, I think viewing the work of the vendor on social media, checking reviews, taking recommendations from ex-clients, also taking recommendations from the venues, because all these vendors are working at the venues, and the venue will be able to tell them how the vendor is when it comes to execution, when it comes to timelines, among other things. And I think beyond that, I just tell somebody, whoever is the vendor you decide on, if of course cost is an important factor, the second factor could be the style, especially when it comes to decor or other things. But how comfortable are you in interacting with the vendor? Because when you are, it is not going to be necessarily a very professional interaction the way it is with in a corporate house between a client and an agency. Whether it is your photographer or your DJ, there is a certain trust which is required. After all, you are going to be sharing special moments from your special day with this vendor or the person who is running the company. And therefore, whoever you choose somebody you just enjoy the interaction with. That does not mean the vendor has to be a very friendly, outgoing person. A vendor could be a very quiet worker who is quietly doing his work. But basis the interactions you had in the business development or proposal making stage, you will be able to gauge whether this person's working style or personal style is in sync with what you want or expect at your wedding.
While you very kindly explained in detail about this, very helpful tips also. but I'm going to stay with this question and ask you something further. Often, brides and grooms, when they are discussing, they struggle to understand, and this you would relate with. How do they ensure that the prices that are being quoted are correct? Or what is the benchmark? Because here there is no rate card. You're not even able to fall back.
Absolutely. Unlike,
Yes.
hotels where you can go and check website, there is nothing. And, and there is such a, there are photographers who are priced at 50,000. There are photographers who are priced at 25 lakhs. There are makeup artists who charge 20,000 per look, and there are makeup artists who charge 2.5 lakhs. What you need to be clear on is right at the beginning. Know what your budget is, and when you are talking about if you are reaching up, I'll give an example. If you are reaching out to a certain venue today, with the things are certain luxury venues of hotel chains are only taking on weddings if the minimum billing is 1 crore a day for the venues and the rooms. So it's just important to, when you start with the venue, you obviously start with the venue, because basis the venue, your other vendors come in. So it doesn't make sense always to get a decorator from Chennai or Delhi if your wedding is happening in Bombay or Lonavala, unless you know that decorator and you really want that decorator's style. So once you fix your venue, you will be able to figure out who are the vendors, because even the vendors and the venues go hand in hand, because vendors of a certain pricing work with certain venues because the clients out there are spending a certain amount. So there are luxury 5 stars, there are 5 stars, there are premium 4 stars, 4 stars, independent venues. So this is a very wide market where in India, there could be a large majority of people who are having a budget, a wedding where the budget is 5 lakhs to 25 lakhs, and there are so many people, maybe thousands, who are having a budget, a wedding where the budget is 3 crore plus, and therefore the vendors are all servicing requirements for a wedding which could start, say, at 5 lakhs and could go up to 50 crores. So that is the kind of wedding.
So then that becomes, yeah, that becomes a challenge for all the brides and grooms to then understand that actually the price that has been demanded, is it the right price or it's not the right price? And if they are, the price is higher, and what is the scope for negotiation? Have they got value for money? That's such a tough time for bride and groom to be realizing, to understand where
Especially
do
if
they
they are on a
stop.
budget, because when you're on a budget, then it's just important to be upfront and tell the vendor that, hey, you know what, I don't have much of a budget. So the person will say, hey, you know what, the main photographer may not be available, but we do have another team which could work around in this budget. Similarly with a makeup artist, so she may say, you know what, I only take on work where the bride is paying me 75,000 per look, but I do have team members who do makeup at 1/3 the price.
So you're saying budget is the key. Once you are clear about the budget, and then that having the
But
even
obviously, everybody's getting married for the first time. They will not know how to allocate the budget. So that is where their own research or talking to the venue on approximately what vendors charge, even reaching out to some vendors to get a ballpark estimate, and be upfront and say, hey, you know what, I'm not sure if I can afford your fee, but do give me a ballpark estimate. And it's the same for everything else. If you go to a jeweler or jewelry designer, he will ask for your budget. If you go to a designer, you have designer lehengas at 1 lakh and you have designer lehengas at 30 lakh. So do not feel, kind of uncomfortable stating what your budget is. What vendors and designers and jewelers appreciate is honesty, because different people have different priorities. Yeah, I know some HNIs in Delhi who spend 5,000 rupees per plate or 10,000 rupees per plate for grand buffet dinner. But I also know HNIs in say a Bangalore or a Chennai who may be having a simple wedding at a Kalyana Mandapam where the breakfast is available at 250 rupees per plate and a very, very elaborate lunch at 650 per plate. So everybody's priorities are different. And of course, the dynamics in the place also, in the place you live in, of course, impact what pricing of the vendors is, which again changes from venue to venue.
Thank you for the explanation. And talking about tips, do you have tips for the potential bride and groom who are looking to get married next year? Where and how they should begin?
I think I would leave with a very simple message. Different people have different styles, but do whatever makes you happy. Don't stress the small stuff. If you want, think ahead, but the execution, it doesn't make sense for you to lock in everything too much in advance unless you're very clear you want a vendor only and you don't want that, vendor to be booked by somebody else. So just have fun in the process and plan for it in such a way that you keep everyone happy, you are happy, and everything will be just the way you envisaged it to be, which is your special day with people you love, and those memories will be there with you for life. And whenever you want to relive those memories, go back to your album and flip through those photographs of your moments to smile and cherish forever.
And since this is a Luxe podcast, we have to ask you our one question, which is there a particular luxury item that you own and cherish in your personal collection?
For me, it would be anything which is versatile and which where I look good in photos. So it would be a Shivan and Naresh pocket square, a Bandgala by Anita Dongre. It could be something simple which I own, which I could have probably bought from a very ordinary store. Even a compliment from somebody who is a Luxe enthusiast makes a simple item a Luxe item for me.
Straight from your heart, huh? With that, we really wish to thank you on behalf of even the listeners. What a fantastic session we had with you. And you have been very kind, explaining to us, taking effort in going into details and sharing with our potential bride and grooms who are planning to tie knot next year. I'm sure they will thank you a lot, besides we thanking you for your time. Thank you, Parthip. It was brilliant. Brilliant talking to you.
Anita, I must say, you're not only an ace marketer, you also make for a very good journalist also, your style of asking questions. So that's really nice. And this has been, even answering your questions has got me to think and, learn something about myself and the industry while answering. So kudos to you for putting together such interesting questions for me.
Well, we all learn and we all thank you. Thank you is all I can say. And I do agree with you on Times of India bit. Yes, thanks to where we come from. We were fortunate. The times were different. Things have changed when it comes to media industry today. But we were the fortunate lot, is all I can say.
Everything has changed, but that is the way of life, right, Anita? Everything changes.
That's true. Once again, thanks, Parthip. We are not going to not reach you again. I'm sure we will reach you back maybe in 2022 with some more questions if we can help.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that already, Anita.
Thank you, Parthip. Thanks a lot. With that, it's a wrap on this week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to or follow this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now so you don't miss out on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Luxe Insider. I'm your host Anita Khatri, and I'll be back next week with yet another exciting episode.